All right.
Hello and happy Father's Day. This is episode 359 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 24th of June, 2020, and featuring Father's Day, written by Paul Cornell, and starring Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor and Billy Piper as Rose Tyler. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Randy Ronson McCulloch,
Good evening.
Mad Matt Winchell,
I continue to be confused by Planescape.
Tim the Enchanter Sheridan,
Hello to you all.
and back after a week of being frightened away by telesnaps, Thomas Fireheart.
Fun
Ooh.
fact, Father's Day in Australia isn't until September.
Yar.
It's not a day I usually pay attention to.
You
Considering
haven't had to in a while.
Yep.
Yeah, considering my father's been dead for almost 30 years now.
Apparently, the UK also had Father's Day this week, which I did not expect to be at the same time.
I don't know if it is usually or not. I know America, it's like always the second to last Sunday in June. I believe that's the rule.
Yeah, it's always around the time, like within 2 weeks at the most of when the local high school graduates.
I don't know if the UK does that or if they do like the third Sunday in June or something like that. I don't know. I mean, rules are different from country to country.
Yep.
So, it could be that normally we have it a week apart, or it could be that we follow the same damn rule. Who knows?
Well, there seems to be the third Sunday in June.
Okay, and it just so happens there's only 4 Sundays in June this month, or this year. Because the 1st of June was on a Monday. So yeah, it could be that it's normally a week apart and just not this year. So how's everybody's week been?
Not too bad.
I discovered that the computer I thought was dead as of last week was actually mostly fine. It was just that the monitor has a weird issue where it lights up for like half a second and then goes dead, which caused me to think that the monitor, or like black, which caused me to think that the monitor was fine and that the computer was dead.
And it turns out it was the monitor. I didn't think about the monitor.
Like,
oh
if the
man, I am losing my touch.
If the monitor wasn't lighting up at all, I would have thought it was the monitor. But because it was lighting up and then going dead, I had thought it was fine the whole time.
How old is that monitor?
I don't know, because this whole computer was used / parts from somebody who like it was built from old parts by somebody who was building himself a new computer who like works in that sort of field. So I don't know how old any of the components were.
It could also be the cable.
It's not the cable, because I checked that cable with the monitor the other monitor I have that I normally use.
Okay.
That works fine.
Well, that's good. If you want to use that computer for anything, salvage anything off of it, etc., you can.
Right.
Yeah, for a reason I didn't think of monitor either. I should have too.
Well, you have more of an excuse than I do, Matt. You don't have 5 years of tech support that would normally diagnose such
Technically,
things.
I don't have tech support service, Randy, but I've had multiple years of unofficial tech support, including my own.
I never heard of a monitor that would light up for like less than a second and then go back to black screen.
Actually, my first flat screen did that after about a half a year or less of owning it.
But I figured it out when I was trying. I was like, okay, I have the spare monitor. Let me switch to a dual monitor setup. And that's how I noticed the problem, was because it was still having that problem when I was trying to use it as a second monitor. So then I started experimenting and figured out what was going on.
So you replaced the monitor. They're not that expensive anymore.
Give it a quick little funerary service, and out in the dumpster it goes.
Or if you want to, take it out in a field and office space it. Just if you need to get some stress out.
You can always give it a Viking funeral.
I wouldn't want those components trying to feed the fish.
Okay. Luckily, it's not quite like that old of a monitor, to the point where I'd be really terrified of what would be unleashed by putting it in nature. But yeah, that's I still wouldn't put it that close into nature.
Strip it into components and sell the gold. Oh. Anybody else have anything interesting this week?
Not really.
I'm progressing through my single player stuff. Populous has been pretty fun so far. I've been enjoying lightning bolts a lot lately. Annoying angry enemy natives, lightning bolt. That'll sort their magic users. Also, I've been working my way through Planescape Torment. Planescape is a world based off of 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, and Planescape Torment is probably one of their more popular PC releases for the Dungeons and Dragons universe. I'm apparently maybe roughly somewhere around the halfway point, a little bit further, and things have been weird lately. I've literally watched as a wall sank into the ground and then space just rippled new buildings into existence. It's been a funky ride. Not to mention, you're playing a character known as the Nameless One, and he's nameless because he has no memories and he can't die.
Huh. Wait, so could he die if you give him a name?
Actually, funny thing is, that's one of the things about his background I've discovered so far, is that maybe the reason he died so often is because he did have a name.
It's like...
Apparently someone knew him by his given name before he died so often that he had amnesia, and that was a bad thing, because they could track him.
So what you have to do, you have to give him a title, like the healer or something, so that nobody knows his real name.
Yeah, using your real name on the Outer Planes, bad idea.
Yeah.
Using an alias, good idea.
And Nameless One just suits him well enough because he basically looks like a... People keep saying that he looks like a person covered in scars. To me, he looks like a dried out ghoul. But he also has the musculature of Conan and is wearing a little more than a loincloth. And I decided that his main class is going to remain fighter.
Now, is this the Frank Frazetta Conan, or...?
Kind of. Think Frank Frazetta Conan buff attitude with like a tiger loincloth with a bone strap over one shoulder, and he's got dreadlocks, and his skin is like greenish blue.
So, if Conan was a Fallout ghoul.
Kind of.
Oh.
All right. Let's not think about that.
By the way, if you look up Planescape Torment, they actually got a live actor to do a still image of his face. I forget where, but I saw somebody who was recently commenting about himself doing that photo shoot.
As long as it's not Keanu Reeves.
No, it was some other guy I didn't know. At least not offhand.
Oh, speaking of Keanu Reeves, I saw a headline that The Matrix 4 is everyone's back on set right now, which I'm not sure if I knew that it was in production.
I think I heard rumors.
I think I had heard rumors of it being in pre, but I didn't know like it was like there wasn't on set to be. Yeah.
I hadn't heard it was filming either, but I knew it was I knew it had been greenlit and was in progress. So that must have been what Keanu just hopped to right after Bill and Ted 3, huh?
Apparently.
He's just doing a greatest hits of his career.
Well, let's hope that 4 is better than 2 and 3 were.
Yep.
Johnny Mnemonic 2, followed by...
That'd be interesting.
Point Break.
Yeah.
Hey, just as long as the Matrix 4 is better than 2 and 3, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's a
those
pretty
really
high bar.
those really kind of ruined the franchise for me.
Yeah,
Two,
it's not a hard bar to struggle over.
it reminds me of how I feel about Pirates of the Caribbean.
True. That seems to be a lot of
The
people.
first one's great. The second one, you start out okay, and then you're just like, okay, this has lost the plot. And then by the third one, you don't give a fuck anymore.
I think, as I've seen people mention, I think the problem that they ran into with the Pirates movies was the big takeaway for them was, oh, everyone loves Jack Sparrow, let's make him the main character, when he seemed to work better as like an
Supporting.
ensemble. Yeah.
Yeah.
He worked better as an ensemble / supporting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's because Jack Sparrow was the comic relief. You don't tend to make the comic relief the main character.
When you do, it's usually short-lived.
Yeah. Unless you're like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
But, if you're not a Hanna-Barbera Saturday morning cartoon, no, you don't want to do that.
Well, I don't know, dude. I didn't like Scrappy that much.
Oh, no, Scrappy was never the comic relief. Scrappy was just a nuisance.
True.
Shaggy and Scooby are the comic relief of Scooby-Doo.
I think he was supposed to be the annoying, over-trying comic relief, and it came off as just annoying.
Which I guess is funny when you get to something like Mystery Incorporated and Fred is also comic relief.
Yeah, they get to the point where they're starting. It's more like they Flanderized him.
Yeah, that sounds like it's not Fred anymore.
So I think we've covered enough topics and gone away from our week to move on to tonight's show.
All right.
Alrighty.
So,
we got so much to talk about tonight, Bill.
Yeah, we've got 2 news articles, 1 birthday, 2 pieces of geek talk, 1 review of shame, and then the episode summary. Who's on?
Me.
Thomas.
Okay. All right.
Thomas is always on deck as soon as he comes back.
Then our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. All right, so let's get on with this. Our only birthday is today, June 24th. And is the birthday of Yasmin Page, who played Maria Jackson in Sarah Jane Adventures. She turns 29. So, happy birthday, Yasmin. Moving on to news.
Okay, to celebrate the launch of Doctor Who on HBO Max, current Doctor Jodie Whittaker and former Doctor David Tennant appeared on CBS's The Late Late Show with James Corden. Jodie and David appeared via the internet in costume to judge a costume contest on the show. The video can be found on The Late Late Show's YouTube channel.
I have not had a chance to watch it. It's been a bad internet day for me. And that's putting it mildly.
Also, in celebrating of HBO Max's streaming of Doctor Who, HBO Max's YouTube channel hosted The Three Doctors Talking, in which Jodie Whittaker, David Tennant, and Matt Smith appeared via the internet to do a 20-minute Q&A panel answering questions such as, what other Doctor's companion would you like to work with? You can see the whole video on HBO Max's YouTube channel.
So, yeah, one's on CBS's, one's on HBO Max's. And it's like, I'm surprised they couldn't get Matt on the Late Late Show one. Because, James Corden knows Matt Smith. So,
Yeah.
you would have thought he would have gone, hey, Matt, I know this. We're doing this. You want in?
Might have been that he was doing something else at the time or something.
He's in lockdown.
Right.
Well, I mean, like, another kind of over-the-internet interview or something like that, maybe? I don't know.
I don't know, dude. He's not that active at the moment.
I like how the HBO Max one really showcased the different, philosophies in terms of, the way the 3 stars think about Doctor Who completely differently from one another in terms of the types of like figures they wanted to meet and such.
Again, I've only seen the little mini clip they had on the What Companion thing.
Oh, okay.
And it's the
Okay,
other
gotcha.
the others like, I want to work with Billy, I want to work with Rory, and David Tennant's like, I would have liked to work with Nicholas Courtney.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, yes, please. Take it.
Of course, he did mention one bit that I'm not sure if we knew or not, how Nicholas Courtney was supposed to appear on Tennant's episode of Sarah Jane Adventures, but he was too sick to do so.
I actually did know that, yes.
Yeah, I think I've heard something about that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
That was a sign. That was a big warning sign.
that was a big
Right.
warning sign. And then, that was then shortly thereafter was the Year of Death.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
All right. That is all our news.
Hmm.
I looked. Big Finish has only pre-releases that came up this week, so
And of course, their weekly deal, which I think is something to do with River Song this week.
I didn't notice. I saw River Song and I immediately put it on ignore.
I got the push
Oh.
notification from the Big Finish app, but I haven't clicked on it. I might, but
Anyway, if you're interested in River Song, you can go to the Big Finish website and get their free deal of the week.
all right. So with starting off Geek Talk, I was able to finish watching Legends of Tomorrow season 5 this week, and yeah, this season of Legends of Tomorrow in some ways is very much following off of the previous season, in that there's a lot of fantasy. It's the John Constantine show featuring the Legends of Tomorrow in many ways. However, the some of the major things that make this season stand out. I'm still on, right? Just because I don't hear any background noise.
Yeah.
Discord hates me. Okay. Discord hates me, so I'm nervous when no one's interrupting.
For a reason you're quiet, but other than that, you seem to be fine.
Okay. So at the end of season 4, they caused a major change to the timeline. And then in between seasons, Crisis happened, which basically, because of where it was placed, it had almost no effect on the show, other than kind of affecting the first episode because Sarah was so important in Crisis. But there's a lot of fallout from that major timeline change. Some of it's good in terms of it causes some cool character development. Some of it is not so good because there's some rom-commy squishiness. Essentially, one of the one member of a couple had her backstory completely rewritten by the timeline change. So the other member of the couple tries to meet up with her and get back together, and the one who had her backstory changed is just not having it. They actually partially deal with that in the fact that because there's so many magical elements, they're actually able to see both versions of that character. But probably my most negative feeling about this episode is that they could have very easily given a happy ending to that and instead chose not to. So I was a little let down by that. It felt like a wasted potential there, but it, maybe it has to do with the next season. I honestly don't know. In terms of like what happens and what's interesting, it's basically a ton of references and parodies. The ending 2-parter parodies, like, I'm so glad I finally read 1984, because 1984 parody was a major part of it. Mr. Rogers parody was a major part of the season. Star Trek parody is there. A few other things. There's one episode I almost posted in our group chat for Matt to go watch, but it's basically I was sitting through the episode counting how many horror movies I felt like they were referencing, parodying, or ripping off in that episode. I got to at least 5. You probably could have found at least 5 more.
Possibly, depending.
I mean,
This season sounds like it's stretching to include a lot of stuff, maybe a little too
Yeah.
hard.
Well, you
so
see,
if I mean,
the thing is that, Legends of Tomorrow is kind of like the light part of the CW
yeah,
verse usually.
it's the comedy show of the CW shows
Hmm.
by far.
Yeah,
Okay.
because Arrow got pretty gritty. Flash can go a little emo at times. So then they started Legends of Tomorrow, and while that did start kind of dark, eventually it was just like the writers kind of pulled a Evil Dead, what the fuck with it, and just started going, let's just have fun. Let's see what we can do.
Come along if you can.
When your main group gets together and basically Kaiju summons a giant plushie for one of the season finales.
Yeah,
So
That was
Godzilla and
great, yeah.
Ghostbusters all at the same time. Okay.
No, it's basically what happens if you turn Furby into a kaiju or Tickle Me Elbow into a kaiju.
Yeah, Ghostbusters. Stay Puft Mushroom Man.
Only
Whereas
on
you had-
your side. Only on the
Whereas
side
you
of
had-
good.
it still
Oh.
deals with dark themes, but they actually had the atom embiggening inside a living person as a way to kill somebody who could not be killed.
Oh,
And
so they
of
pulled an
course-
Ant-Man.
Yeah.
He didn't go up his butt, but yes.
Actually, which one was it that actually went berserk in comics and did that to somebody? I forget which one it was, but one of them actually did it.
I don't know.
I'm
Popped
not
inside
sure.
somebody, grew full size, and then killed them. Actually, I think it might have been Adam.
But which Adam?
I'm not sure. It
I
was.
think the only thing I know of is like,
I think it was a comic that
someone went
Linkara reviewed back in the
inside-
day.
yeah, like someone went inside someone's head and was like messing around, stepping on their brain and stuff.
Oh, I
and
believe that.
like led to something, and that was like a storyline that Linkara was like shitting on.
Yeah,
I
because it was
forget exactly
awful and
what.
turned a decent moral character into
Yeah.
a
It was like
psychotic
it
killer.
was a Justice League storyline from what I can recall.
So basically, if you like references to geeky products and comedic comic bookiness, Legends of Tomorrow season 5 would be something you'd enjoy.
Alrighty. Was there something else that was going to get geek mentioned?
Luigi's Mansion 3 is now.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah, like as far as I know, I've had this game since launch, but I just finally got around to finishing it recently. I think I technically finished it before you guys podcasted last week, but obviously didn't add it until after, just so it didn't get confusing. It's kind of funny because I haven't played Luigi's Mansion 2, even though I basically, from what I can remember being told, it's like, well, you didn't miss much.
well, it still considers itself a sequel, and it still added a few things, but not a ton of things. And
Yeah.
it was also only
think-
on, I
yeah.
think, 3DS.
Yeah, it was like, I think, which is mainly why I didn't, because I haven't owned like, not counting the Switch, the last time I owned a handheld console was like the Game Boy Color. So it's been a few decades. So I didn't play it. I think the only real thing that probably carried over that I missed the context of is like the ghost puppy that follows you around
Oh,
occasionally.
okay, yeah, I think that was something that might have been in the second one.
Yeah, because it definitely wasn't in the first one. It's kind of interesting because because I'd only ever played the first game, I'm used to just, well, it's a mansion, whereas in this game, it's like an extremely fucking huge hotel. With like, God, I think it's like 15 floors, but it looks like way bigger, and there's like 2 basement floors.
Of course. Gotta have the alternate boss.
Yeah. And like, I feel like some people would probably have a go at this for being a bit simplistic, but honestly, I had fun with it. I guess that's the thing. I wasn't like extremely hyped for it. I was just like, oh shit, Luigi's Mansion. I remember liking the first one, so I'll give this one a go. And I got what I wanted out of it. If anything, I
He's
kind
still
of
using the ghost busting Hoover.
Yeah.
yeah. This game actually, in a way, you could argue that this one flat out has a Ghostbusters seeming reference in it because you get an upgrade at one point that basically makes the vacuum cleaner thing that you're using even more powerful, and it like is giving off like electricity and shit. So it's like, oh, that looks vaguely more Ghostbusters-y than just a vacuum cleaner. So that's
Well,
nice.
let us know if the
Um,
fourth one, and actually I'll probably know by then, but let us know if the fourth one starts shooting slime.
well, I mean, you do literally have like a thing that you can make called Gooigi. That's like this
Oh, yeah,
little.
I know about the Guiji, but I'm literally talking about having
Yeah.
a backpack thing that will shoot slime with positive energy.
I mean, like, the interesting difference between this and the first game is in the first game, you could, like, uh, shoot out, like, water and fire, I think. In this case, it's more like if you need fire for something, you've got to, like, suck up a torch that's on fire, or suck up a torch, set it on fire, and then use it on whatever you need to. Um, but yeah, like, I guess the other thing that I like is that instead of any kind of, at least the closest they have to like a lives system is you can, using in-game money, you can buy these golden bones, and essentially when your health goes to zero, that dog will show up, take
Hmm.
one of the bones and leave. And thankfully, if you're in the middle of a boss fight, most games would make you start the boss fight over again. This doesn't.
So rescue in the
Unless
middle
you
of a
like
dog fight and give you
actually,
hit points.
yeah,
Boss fight.
unless you game over, you basically just keep going. So you could be like right near the end of the boss fight and die, and you would just keep going from that point with your health restored. And it's like, oh, thank God, because that would have been a pain in the ass. Because it was like, I think I topped up because like the most you can have at any one time is like 10. And doing the final boss fight, I think I don't know how many I ended up losing, maybe only two. But like the second time was like right near what ended up being the end of the boss fight. So it was like, thank God I don't have to start this over again because it's like a 3-phase fight. Like I would not want to have to start this over again.
I can't tell you how many
Um,
old retro games I got to like the last 2 or 3 shots against a boss and then die.
oh, like I've been playing Owlboy recently, and that's a similar thing where if you lose, like if you die during that fight, you've got to start all over again. It's like
Well, they deliberately made Owlboy to be as retro as possible.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, like I would definitely say that if you've got like a Nintendo Switch and you liked the previous Luigi's Mansions game, I'd say give it a go. Even if you didn't, I'd say like wait until it's on sale or something if you're still a bit iffy and like give it a shot because it isn't really like it's like as much as it's a continuation, it still is fairly standalone. It's more so that the villain is just like what the fuck, I'm still trying to get revenge on you or whatever, but it's like you know eh. It still kind of works as its own thing to me. I didn't really feel like there was any context I was missing by not having played the second one, short of the dog. But yeah, like I would definitely say give it a shot if you've got a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I've heard all the Luigi's Mansions have been very good so far. All right. We had a review of Shame, I believe.
Yes. The Reign of Terror, which The funny thing about that is I remember watching it for the podcast, so I don't know what the fuck happened that night. Maybe I didn't finish it. I'm not sure.
I think you either had technical issues or something came up at the
Or like
last
finals or something. Yeah.
Got you. Like, because I remember rewatching it for the podcast. Although I did not realize at the time that there was an animated version that came out in 2013. So I was able to catch part of that rewatching it for today. Funny thing about 60s video quality is that the animated stuff is easier to see what's going on than the actual live action. So the Reign of Terror, what I liked about this episode is this is one of those episodes that really goes all out with the score. And it just really felt like a really creative, really interesting score that, you know, it's felt like it's something unique every time you hear music playing, I felt like. What I disliked, I guess it falls under the curse of every six-parter, where it tends to feel a bit padded and could do with being shortened a bit. And I would say my favorite scene is the doctor essentially pulling his first psychic paper scene, even though it's not psychic paper because he writes it in pencil, although for all we know, he just writes a psychic code and turns it into psychic paper. We never actually see what he wrote. But, you know, he buys a costume and shows up and is just like, yes, I am an authority. You should respect me. And it goes along from there. So that was an enjoyable scene. My least favorite scene, and this isn't a huge grievance, but it was the only one I could come up with, was just Susan being all doom and gloom to the point where she's often the character to be, you know, to add tension to the scene, to be like, scream, whatever, you know. But in this particular scene, it was more like she was just being intentionally unhelpful. Like, oh yeah, we can try to escape. It's only going to take us 20 years, you know. Which I guess is actually more like an Earth teenager than any of her other episodes, when I put it that way. In general, I do enjoy this story. I actually, I don't know how accurate it is, but I feel like I learned a lot about the French Revolution in there because it's not really. I don't know about your experiences, but I don't think it's really taught very much in U.S. schools, other than the influence it had on like U.S. British French relations during our own revolutionary period. And there was some comedic aspects to it. And yeah, if not for the fact of it being a six-parter, I would probably give it a 4.5 or a 5. I'm kind of on the edge between a 4 and a 4.5. I think I'm going to settle down on the 4.
Okay. That puts you the same score as I gave it. Matt gave it a 3. Tim gave it a 3.5, and Thomas, of course, did not rate.
I didn't get a chance to listen to our podcast of it before coming on and talking about it. What were like the major things people talked about? Does anyone remember?
I do not remember.
I just remember this being one of the really bad ones for missing out what was going on, because there's a couple of action scenes.
Oh, okay, because you only had the telesnaps and not the animated.
Yeah, because as far as I was aware, that never got released.
Yeah,
I remember seeing a teaser like way back that they were planning on possibly doing it, but I never actually saw that it was released.
Apparently, it was part of the 2013 DVD release, and I didn't realize that until I happened to come across it searching on Dailymotion.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that came out.
Mm-hmm.
I remember looking forward to it, and then I think even when we mentioned this one, I'm like, oh, this anime thing? Oh, wait, no, that thing never came out, did it?
Yeah, I knew that they'd showed some scenes from the Reign of Terror on an upcoming film clip by one of the companies.
Yeah, it was the two. I think the 2 missing episodes or whatever is what was animated, but not the whole story, obviously. So it was like episodes 4 and 5, I think.
I think it was the company that the guy that did the Doctor Who anime on YouTube, and then was later hired by the BBC. I thought it was his company that was doing it. But yeah, I had no idea that was released either. And to be honest, as somebody that took both, U.S. and world history, I learned more about the French Revolution from playing Assassin's Creed Unity than I did from what I learned in the classroom.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had world history too, and they didn't really go into much detail on the Reign of Terror.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah,
very brief side note. I actually learned more about the Reign of Terror
So-
on YouTube.
From
Because-
my
Unfortunately-
recollection, all of world history after the Roman Empire was condensed into one semester at my high school.
Well, no,
So
the
if-
problem is that they would focus on something going on in time period A, and everything after 1750 is U.S. history for us. So
much.
while the French Revolution's going on, of course, the American Revolution's going on.
Yeah.
So that's the focus of our time period. Then they cut to the War of 1812, and then the American Civil War,
I learned
and we
more
don't
about
get back to Europe again until World War One.
I learned more about the French Revolution from my AP US history book than I did from world history. But even then, there was maybe just short blurbs because the main focus was on, this is how it affected allegiances that affected the US Revolution.
I mean, they would sum it up by the French, had the revolution, got rid of the monarchy. Then Napoleon took over, declared himself emperor, and went to war with Europe. That's
I think
basically
it
what they
mainly
told us
just-
in our history courses.
I think it mainly just focused on the French and the English were enemies at this time, and therefore the French were our friends. Like that's pretty much the gist of what I learned.
And when the French asked, "Hey, could you help us rebuild? We're
yeah.
kind of financially broken over here." America, that went. That's great. Thank you so much for helping us.
Oh yeah.
It was so
And-
nice of
and-
you to do. We really can't afford to do anything for
wait.
you. Bye.
And we bought a bunch of land from Napoleon that people
Oh
already
yeah,
lived in.
that's the other thing. Is Napoleon comes to America, is like, I need money. Well, you've got all this land, from
Just-
Louisiana on north. We would like to
Just-
buy that.
This land that multiple nations already lived on that they didn't give a fuck about. Oh, American history.
Well, other than the American tribes, that was primary colonized by the French. The British had, big areas in Canada. And by that point, the Dutch had already left. Because Britain had come in and kicked out the Dutch out of their New England colonies. So, yeah. France had claimed all that land as theirs. And then America bought it from them, so it became U.S. territory. And that pretty much started the whole manifest destiny, because even after we reached the end of the Louisiana Purchase, America's still like, yep, we're still going. All the way until we hit the ocean on the other side. Oh, you down there in Mexico claim some of this land? Well, we'll just take it from you.
Yeah.
They're calling it Texas.
Hence the Spanish-American War and the Mexican-American Wars, which also get brushed over very briefly in U.S. history. I'd like to mention.
Yeah, it's
Other than like the Battle of the Alamo, it's like they happened.
The only time the Spanish-American War is mentioned is Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. That is very briefly.
Yeah, they mentioned Roosevelt on San Juan Hill. And then they pretty much, like, the next week, you're going right into World War One.
It's like,
Anyway.
wait, no, what happened? Anyway, history lesson over.
Yep. On to the summary.
And I believe that was Thomas, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, we start out with Rose being talked about her dad to by Jackie, and then we find out that Rose, I guess, just wanted to see their wedding, so we get to see a little snippet of that before Rose just tells the doctor that she wants to go to the day her dad died so she can just be with him as he's dying. But when they get there, she just can't bring herself to go over to him, and the doctor comforts her and is like, okay, we'll try again, but this is the last chance. And this time, Rose just runs out in front and pushes him out of the way, which pisses the doctor off to no end. And when they go back to her dad's flat, the doctor just goes on about how much this could fuck up with time, and they have a little bit of a fight, and he storms off. Meanwhile, Rose goes with her dad to the church, and the doctor goes back to the TARDIS only to realize that it's basically just a police box now, and runs back to the church. Though as Rose is there, they start to realize that something weird's going on, and these bizarre monsters come out of nowhere. And the doctor gets everyone to go inside the church, and they hold up in there for a while. After a while, and some interactions between all the characters, and Rose realizing that as much as Jackie would talk her husband up, that when they were actually together, they were usually at odds. The
Wow, you're being
doctor's
polite
TARDIS
about
key.
it.
The doctor's TARDIS key starts to glow, and he realizes that if he can rejigger some stuff, he can basically make the TARDIS materialize within the church, possibly. But as that's going on, the baby Rose is given to Rose to hold for a second, which the doctor tries to stop from happening, but it makes one of those monsters materialize, and the doctor basically allows himself to be devoured by it, and it, as it's flying around the church, it gets in the way of where the TARDIS was trying to form and just disappears, as does the TARDIS, and the key drops to the floor. And all the while, Rose's dad has realized that he was supposed to die, and that's why all this is happening. And he selflessly goes out when he realizes that the car is still trying to find him to hit him. He just runs out into the street, gets hit by the car, and Rose is with him as he dies. Everyone who was in the church basically seems to forget what the hell was going on. And we get a retelling of what happened from Jackie telling Rose as a child with the new timeline of events. And I think that's about it. I honestly forget exactly what the what note the episode ends on. So, yeah.
Alrighty. About 4 minutes, 7 seconds.
All right, so let's talk about what we liked about the episode, and Matt, you're first.
What we liked about the episode. I don't think we talk about that often. At least we haven't in a really long time. So I just like the fact that Rose has so much like really easy to understand backstory that you can pull stuff from, and this is one of the big ones that they could like in the middle of the first season.
Yeah, she really has a more fleshed out backstory than a lot of companions that came after her, I think.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
companions after her weren't as quite as fleshed out as this.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that Russell T did was give Rose a family and a story. If you think about your classic companions, what do we know about their families? We know nothing about Ian and Barbara's. Susan's
Yeah.
was the doctor.
Yep.
Vicky was an orphan.
Mm.
Don't know anything about Stevens. Don't know much about Dodos.
Well, Stevens actually, that was pretty simple. We don't know his family stuff, but we know that he was somehow lost in space.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
it, yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
but what I mean is the fact that giving them family gives them supporting cast to go back to.
Yeah.
For a second, it seemed like you're doing. I don't know the name of the song, but I don't know much biology. I shouldn't even try to sing, so I'm not going to try.
No, don't.
Yeah,
But
don't.
I
I'm
wasn't.
sure
I
you
was
got
not
the
trying.
reference. I'm sure you got the
Yeah.
reference by now.
But yeah, they didn't go into any detail about any
Yeah.
characters' families,
Yeah.
other than the occasional one or two lines.
Yeah, like the only reason Joe Grant is in unit is because of like her.
Her
She has a
uncle, I think.
relative who's
Yeah.
is in
Yeah,
like a
her uncle.
high-ranking position.
Brigadier had a
Uh,
wife that I'm pretty sure never met.
And I think we knew that Perry's father was an archaeologist or something, but we never met him.
No, we met him
Yeah.
very briefly on
Should-
the beginning of her first episode.
Yeah,
Honestly, yeah,
so we
I
meet
feel
him for
like-
what, 5 minutes, and then he's never
Barely.
seen again.
I,
Yeah,
I believe the backstory
Mm.
of her name was that he was a biologist.
yeah, something
Mhm.
like that. He was
Yeah,
a
and,
man
like,
of science of some kind.
Yeah, and like we don't get much like fleshing out. Isn't it funny in a way we don't see any like Sarah Jane relatives until we get spin-offs.
But
Help.
Or like stuff
Curse
of her
of Fenric is
backstory.
probably by far the most family backstory we got of a companion up to that point.
yeah, that's actually true. Because that's basically dealing with Ace's grandmother and pretty much the birth of her mother, I think, or her newborn mother.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the most we see. And then we get to the Russell T. Davey era, and every companion in that era had
She-
family.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's like even as you get to Rose, she has a mother, she has a fuckboy, she has a dead father.
Mm.
And then you get to Martha. She has a mother who's divorced from her father.
But Martha, we don't get to see much of her backstory at all.
Oh, we get quite a bit.
We get quite a few bit
You?
of Martha.
More than others
Of
anyway.
of her history before she met the doctor.
Oh, not sure about personal history, but we get to know a lot about her extended family and what's going on between them.
And the fact that they're not really that great of people.
Yeah.
And then
It's
we
what-
get into Donna's family,
Mm-hmm.
and we get to know her mother and her father briefly, and then we get to know her
I
mother
mean-
and her grandfather.
And that's partially because everybody loved Wilf before they even brought in Donna.
Mhm.
And then, of course, they jump to Moffat, and then we get to Amy. And I think we see Amy's parents or her relative.
She
in,
doesn't
like,
get
a
parents
couple of
until she
flash-
reboot. She gets parents when she reboots the universe.
Yeah.
And then we never see them again.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then we see Rory's
And then
dad,
then we see Rory's dad in the very last half season. They're there,
Yep.
and then Clara never really establishes much
Clara
for
has
a
a
family.
house, but I don't think she ever has any family living in the house with her.
I think
she
she was technically taken in by her uncle, and she lives with them at least for the
Yeah.
first season she's a part of. But after that, she
Do
does
we
move
ever
on her own.
Do we ever meet that uncle?
We meet his kids, the two annoying brats that.
Yeah, we meet the two. Yeah, you remember the Siren Man story with the annoying brat? Yeah,
I think
them.
they were just people she babysat. Yeah.
And then
Yeah, like with Clara, it was more like the impossible girl thing rather than
Right.
anything else.
Yeah, they didn't
And
really
then
focus on her family
And then
extensions.
Bill, who has no family and is pretty much Oliver Twist.
yeah, and then we've gotten a little more into family again.
Oh yeah, that's true. The Chibnall era, there's been a bit of backstory
Mhm.
on all the companions. We haven't really gotten Graham's backstory, but that's because he's an old man.
Yep.
But we at least had him and Grace.
And
in
I guess
series
everything
11.
with Grace is kind of his backstory.
And
yeah.
Grace, and the
Yeah.
fact that what's his name is basically his step.
Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan's his
Yeah.
step grandson. Yep.
Right.
Mhm.
But Ryan and Yaz both have backstory stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for most of Doctor Who, the companions didn't have that much. What we knew of them was developed mostly through their relationship with the Doctor. When we met Sarah Jane Smith, all we knew about her is that she was kind of this nosy, progressive reporter.
Yeah, I don't think we actually found out about any extended family of hers until we meet her aunt in Canine and Company.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then
It
like
took us
And that's
long.
about all
again-
the limitation we get until she starts making her own family in Sarah Jane Adventures.
I was going to
Yep.
say, yeah, then
Yeah.
apparently she lived on her own for 20, 30 years and then became the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we
because by
get,
the
like-
time the Five Doctors rolls around, she's living in town again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we get the backstory of and whatever happened to Sarah Jane, of like this one incident that happened in her childhood that sort of
Right.
sparked the thing of where she is now, essentially.
But all
Um,
of that was, when they, came back to the character
Yeah.
during the Russell T era.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The original run of her as a companion didn't really flesh it out, other than she was an investigative reporter, was progressive, was nosy. That was pretty much
Mhm.
her entire character bio when they basically gave it to Liz Sladen and said, "Here, act this."
Yep.
So yeah, when they gave this to Billy Piper, they gave all this stuff. They basically built a character Bible around who Rose Tyler was.
Mhm.
Yeah. In a way, I almost wonder if it's because they, like, RTD knew going, like, because I'm pretty sure, like, Eccleston had only ever signed on for the one series, so I guess he figured I'll put more into this character's going to be sticking around, so I'll put some effort into her more than
I didn't think they
'cause the
knew that
Doctor's
he
always
was
got a new
around for the
mystery
one
anyway.
season. I thought that occurred during production when he got fed up.
Yeah,
with
I
Russell T
think
and-
that was after the episodes were filmed, but
Uh,
before they aired, but after they were filmed. But even still, they did all the development with the Time War and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
mm.
Yeah, if you think about it, Russell T put in more backstory of the Doctor in one bite than they'd ever put into him before.
Still left things vague enough, but yeah, they punched up enough background for him. It's just like, what's all this madness?
Yeah.
They left us spinning for like what, 3-4 years?
But yeah, that seems to be what's giving it the big thing is the is adding all the backstory.
Yeah. And of course, it's something that you can get away with more in the RTD era, where we only had one companion at a time for the most part.
Yeah, that kind of helps, turns out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
mean,
really,
By that logic, the 6th and 7th Doctor eras should have had great development, and the 4th Doctor era.
and they didn't.
True. I guess I mean like in New Who, at least.
I was about
it's
to
like-
say, well, that's classic
But
Who. They
it's-
didn't
I
really
mean,
care that much about the companions then.
Television changed from 1970 to 2000, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, how much backstory were put into the original Star Trek characters during their run?
During the run?
I was going to say most of Kirk's backstory, I think, came into play in the movies.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
other than there was one episode where we basically met his nephew. That was about it.
Mhm, that's right.
We learned about his
I
older
think I
brother.
think Spock had more background in the TV show than Kirk did.
And he got at least one episode because I think his family. Actually, no, he got 2 episodes. That
He
basically
got at least a couple
were
episodes because both his family members, both his parents, eventually showed up on the ship.
on one
Hmm.
but that was one episode. It was, but then there was the point that he had to go back to Vulcan for Ponfar. So
That
that
too.
was that was 2 episodes worth of character development, which was one episode more than Kirk did, and was a crapload more than say Sulu and Chekhov got.
Right.
Yeah.
Even Nurse Chapel got some background.
In her development, but that was all in the one episode in her premiere episode. But so that was the way TV was thought of back then. And again, this might be one of those changes to the way TV works that Buffy brought to TV.
A bit, yeah. I would argue a bit.
Because we all know that Russell T played by the Joss Whedon playbook. He thought Buffy was one of the greatest shows ever, and basically wanted to make Doctor Who like Buffy.
By the way, how long have we done this particular topic?
That's
Yeah.
an interesting topic.
Yeah. We have time to spare.
I've been watching the clock, but I also know we're still on the first hour, so it's like we're not running up.
Yeah.
If you say so.
But
I mean, if people are bored by this, we can move on. But
I'm just saying that we've been kind of rambling on this topic for a while.
well,
but yeah, I think the point is well made at the very least. Yeah.
All right. So who was that?
That was mine. We only
Okay.
got to me.
All right, Thomas.
So Thomas is next.
Let's see. I'm gonna go.
Okay,
with...
don't tell us after all that you haven't picked something.
Well, it's like, think of like, as we were, I was like, okay, I've got to make sure I've actually got mine, and yeah, I'm just gonna go with Eccleston's acting in this.
Okay.
Because like when it's a thing of like when like you have the moments where he's like pissed off at Rose for fucking with time, but also like it's not like I want him to die, but like we got to preserve the space-time continuum here. Like he's not just like necessarily shouting in her face about like, oh, you like. There is a bit of, oh, you stupid human, but like,
yeah,
most of it is just like, you have no idea what you're messing with here. But like, he's still worried about everyone.
Talking about things RTD watched, the stupid ape things make me wonder if he was a Dragon Ball Z fan.
That just seems to be a sci-fi alien go-to.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like I could see whether he's done it or not. I feel like I could see that as a Tom Baker line.
As far as we know, he just watched a lot of Zim.
Or played Destroy All Humans. Stupid Earth monkeys.
Yeah. All right. Tim.
I really liked the dialogue in this episode because I felt it was very natural and not contrived at all. Like so many times, like when you're dealing like with this type of things, like I'll hear someone say something and they're like, "Really? That's what you're going to talk about right now?" Or like, "That's the first thing that comes to your mind." But like the dialogue between Rose and the Doctor, and even when Jackie starts getting argumentative, it's like it feels like she would say that in this situation. It's like like everyone is like saying the right things for once.
I guess to tag onto that, I'm glad they didn't try to force in any 80s lingo.
It's like,
to be
it's
like, hey, remember we're in the
like,
Well, no,
hey,
Let-
Rose, you're totally
See,
tubular.
that's the benefit of Rose being the only teenager in the episode.
yeah.
I think she was 19 at this point. I could be wrong, but
I don't recall.
is that about it, Tim?
Yeah, that's about it.
all right,
Okay.
Bill.
So for mine, I'm going to go with both. I'm going to go with this episode has the focus on the Dr. shtick of the average person is important, and I think it worked naturally within the story as it was the Doctor's way of comforting people and of showing some empathy, which kind of counterbalanced the racism, but also I think it was very important. This is a family show with a lot of children watching it, in which they're really focusing on death in the family and mourning and things like that. So the idea of everybody being important in their own way, kind of from the thematic and the processing aspect of it, was also a really good counterbalance to that.
If I may say something to that, I remember the first time I watched this episode, I got this impression that the episode seemed to be implying that every time the Doctor goes back and saves someone, like from getting killed by a Dalek or a monster, it he does it because he knows that that person either didn't affect the timeline to the point where like it doesn't matter if they live or die.
I think it was more to the point of basically saying like they kind of between Rose's influence, like between Rose being a time traveler and they're returning to the same spot, they kind of made it like a weak point. Like they kind of almost like wearing through the fabric of like your favorite shirt or whatever. And by saving him, they kind of like tore a hole in that weakened fabric.
Well, it was a little more than
Yes.
that because they basically crossed their own timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
For twice the reason. The only reason Rose and the Doctor was there was because they knew Pete was going to die. By saving him, he didn't die. So there was no reason for Rose and the Doctor to be there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but twice. So the fact that they did that, well, that's why the Rose and the Doctor disappear. The original Rose and the Doctor, when the later Rose comes out, is because there was no longer a reason for them to be there.
But I mean, he also mentions in the episode the fact that there being two copies of them in the same spot made the area more susceptible to paradoxes.
Well, what it did was it caused it to not. It caused the point to become unfixed, because to them that should have been a fixed point in time. They knew Pete Tyler died at that time at that place, but because they basically were there and there again, they kind of managed to unravel the knot a little. And like they said, originally the Time Lords would have come down and gone, no, and would have re-killed Pete. They would have fixed this problem by re-killing Pete. Because
then they would have wiped Rose's memory, sent her back to 2005,
forced the Doctor to regenerate and probably exile them somewhere. Because they're the Time Lords and that's what they fucking do. They're a bunch of dickbags.
Yeah.
But the Time Lords were all non-existent at this point. So at least supposedly.
Yeah.
So they couldn't do anything. So instead the paradox occurred. Earth managed to start, our time managed to start unraveling itself, and the Reapers came in.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I always had a hard time trying to understand where the Reapers came from, but now we've actually satisfactorily clarified it for me, my small monkey mind.
All right.
And the
So
funny
now
thing
go to
is that as we are talking about it, I actually reminded me of how they messed with time and certain other things in Legacy of Kain, but that's another story.
so now for what Randy liked about the episode.
I actually liked Pete.
Hmm.
I liked his arc. There were some moments he had. I mean, he comes off as being a bit of a silly character at first,
Hmm.
but then when he kind of realizes who Rose is, he gets kind of emotional. And at the
I
end
like
of it, I'm actually kind of sobbing when
Mm.
he gets to the point where I know what I have to do now.
I liked how he put two and two together in a logical way, but without being that
Yeah.
sort of like Sherlock Holmesy character.
Mhm.
Just somebody who's just kind of perceptive and has that bit of emotional intelligence that Jackie doesn't have, and he's able
Yeah.
to connect those things.
Mm-hmm.
Ki-
I
In,
think
in,
that's
in short, it kind of shows where
with
Rose gets
Rose.
it once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And also,
Because
like,
one thing Jackie is clueless.
yeah. And it is a thing, like, where if you didn't give a shit about Pete, this episode just wouldn't work.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
it's like one of the most important aspects of it, where if that actor is off, or like the writing is for that character is stupid, this whole episode would just fall to bits.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen before, even in Doctor Who. Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, anybody?
Yeah.
Where they're trying to make a character like, oh, you're supposed to feel sorry for him. You don't, because the character doesn't trigger any sympathy in you because he's so badly acted.
So badly acted and so badly written. I mean, all of those extra characters were.
Yeah.
It was a pretty sorrowful episode, that one.
Pete's actor, by the way, is Sean Dingwall. He has been in a lot of stuff. But you know, a lot of television.
Yeah.
He was in the reimagining of Survivors. He was in the BBC version of Crime and Punishment. He's in a lot of things that have won BAFTAs, but I don't think he's won any awards himself.
Like, is he like has he been like any lead role? Or like,
I can't really tell. No, they've called them leading roles. He was apparently a leading role in the BBC One serial Charles II, The Power and the Passion, as Thomas Osborne, the Earl of Denbigh. He's been in quite a bit of period drama, actually. One of his earlier roles was Lance Corporal Steve Evans in Soldier Soldier. So, yeah. It's kind of hard to tell, you know, what he was in, or, you know, whether his acting got specific awards or anything, but I don't see him as having won anything personally, so, Pete Tyler is one of his more famous roles, though. All right, so let's talk about what we didn't like about this. Matt, you are first.
Overall, what I didn't like about this. I guess, as I said just a little bit a while ago, hearing everyone else's input and what they managed to gather from the episode, it finally clarified the Reapers for me. But up until this point, I just didn't understand them. They seemed to just literally come out of nowhere and went back to nowhere.
No,
And you would think that there's something like this, especially if frequent time travel, would happen a little more often, and then you would actually like know what they are and why they popped up like this.
Yeah, the fact that we have never seen the Reapers before or again, even though Doctor Who frequently winds up causing little fuck-ups in time, would have been nice.
Yeah, we should have at least seen them a couple of times by now.
Yeah, that's basically mine as well. It's just like, and also it like, to me their addition just seems like well, I guess we need a monster of the week.
Yeah, it feels like they need
Instead
to
of,
give the
like-
time bubble a monster for some reason, even though
Yeah.
the time bubble itself isn't of a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
if
like,
they had
it
just
almost
caused
feels like
if they just caused the fact that they were in a time bubble that was slowly collapsing.
Or something like that, yeah.
like maybe the
Yeah, and
doctor
it's-
realizes the church is like a safe spot
And it's like
that
the
isn't
whole
being as
thing.
affected.
The whole thing makes sense when viewed as a natural phenomenon and the result of fucking up time. But as animals, as physical entities that are distinct from one another, the Reapers don't have their own logic because they're just kind of they're like lightning bolts in animal form. They're a representation of a natural phenomenon, but they don't have their own animalistic logic that we can understand and follow.
All right. So, Thomas.
Yeah, I pretty much latched on to Matt's, and I don't think I've really got anything else.
Tim.
So
Actually, really quick, I just realized checking out stuff. Pete's actor was actually in the Dragon Age games.
oh.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, Tim.
Well, anyway, this is a very serious thing. No one mentions the fact that Rose, as a baby, has blue eyes, and
Oh.
Billy Piper has brown eyes.
I'm pretty sure that's common among infants that they're born with blue eyes and then develop into whatever eye color as they age.
Sometimes.
It can happen.
It definitely
It has-
can happen. It's not like an all the time thing, though.
No,
Yeah.
I have heard it happening before, especially with blondes. For whatever reason,
Okay.
there's a lot of kids that are born with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they lose either the eye color, the hair color, or both as they grow older by 8-9 months.
Yeah, I'm the reverse. I was born with brown eyes, and then I slowly lost my blonde hair.
I guess, and it's funny
Okay.
because they got like the kid Rose, who I think had this. Like, actually, they got a kid who had the same eye color as Billy Piper, so it's kind of funny. Like, the baby was fairly consistent. So I guess you could chalk it up to that, maybe, or like just no one noticed, or it was like
it's a possibility,
oh,
or
shit,
yeah,
this
it
is
just
the
could
eye
be
color.
that no one
Or-
noticed it was the most
It's-
available baby at the time.
Yeah,
It's
that's
possi-
what I was going to say. It's what they
it's
had
po-
on hand.
It's possible they looked at Billy Piper's baby pictures and they're like, "Oh, when Billy Piper was 6 weeks old, she had blue eyes." And
Again, possibility. We're not sure though.
Possible.
Yeah.
All right.
Not sure, but that is an inconsistency, and that's an eyebrow raiser.
Again, that
that
is
was
kind of a
Tim's?
nitpick because I've never noticed it. Yeah, that was Tim, so it'd be you.
okay, so my first choice was taken, and I'm going to go with the fact that I know she runs the edge between being an antagonist and a comic relief and being annoying, but I feel like Jackie is just unbearable in this episode, and I'm trying to remember if there was even a single scene that humanizes her. But I'm pretty sure she's just there to make your life miserable in this episode.
Who is?
Jackie.
Well, her whole point there is to state the fact that obviously the wonderful marriage that Jackie was telling Rose about wasn't really a thing, but
True.
Yeah.
But I mean, even like, do we even see a hint that she cares about Pete when he's alive?
we do when he's about to go off himself.
Yeah, there's I believe a bit of
and
that.
when she finally realizes who Rose actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the fact that her memories of him are usually very positive, and she's telling Rose about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, what we see of Jackie in there is, of course, Pete shows up to a wedding with a young girl who he claims he's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also they bring up this apparent the other part where Pete might have been having an affair with somebody, might not have, might just be a freaking unlucky guy.
Right, which then you get the impression he already was that guy.
Yeah,
Like, the
so
unlucky
it's
as
just it just further shows how unlucky the poor
That-
guy is.
That's an interesting thing that really comes down to casting and directing. Because with a different actor, you would 100% be like, oh, yeah, he was fucking around. But looking at this actor and the way he acts, I did not believe that he was.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No,
He
yeah,
was
he maybe had his head up his bum about his little ideas and how they could have worked, but
Yeah,
he definitely
he came
wasn't
off
like
as
trying to
completely
cheat on
sincere
Jackie
to
or
me.
anything.
Trying to figure out who the baby was in this.
I don't know if they would have a listing for that.
Yeah, I don't see any
Hmm.
names, so the baby might have been anonymous.
Yeah, maybe just someone on the crew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's someone on the crew having to have a baby, which is more than likely.
Can you bring your baby for the next week into the studio? Why? Well, we need a baby for this episode.
Need a
so-
baby for this episode. Girl, if possible, but at the very least, needs to have blonde hair and won't complain too much about having something for a little girl in the 80s put on her.
Apparently, Billy Piper was scared of holding the baby. By the way.
Well, yeah, she knew about the Blinovich effect.
She knew about the what?
The Blinovich effect.
No, I said Billy Piper was scared, not Rose.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
Billy Piper, not the actual character in the episode. Bill.
Anyway,
Oh, I found it. IMDb. Young Rose Tyler. Oh, and wait, maybe that's not the baby.
no, that's
Oh,
the
that's
that's the one
that's the one that's getting told about
the
her father.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see a
forgotten
listing
that
for the
that
baby.
part was part of the episode, and when the episode started and it showed like the young girl, I was like, "That's way too old to be the Rose